I hope your Sunday is going well. Welcome to Rwanda Television News and the news in details. Rwandans from all walks of life have commended the discussions that were held at the RPF Inkotanyi Extended National Executive Committee meeting, noting that it was fruitful and the advice given by the President Paul Kagame, who is the chairperson of the party, were words of wisdom that should be heeded. Serge Nori has more.
During the meeting, President Paul Kagame emphasized on the importance of not ignoring Rwanda's uniqueness when it comes to dealing with the challenges she faces. There is a word I really like and we used to use a lot, Ubudasa, our uniqueness. How come you no longer use that word? Have you rejected our uniqueness? Are you tired of it? The fact is that we have our own unique characteristics and challenges that are not the same as those faced by others. Our uniqueness gives us a way of dealing with those challenges, addressing things like limited resources so that we may achieve a lot. That is what enables us to work the way we do. That is the way it should be. As for things like refusing to do as others are, then you will not be fulfilling the responsibilities of the RPF the way we work to serve the country, using our uniqueness. People from different walks of life have commended the fruitful dialogue that was held during the Extended National Executive Committee meeting of the RPF in Inkotanyi. Every Rwandan sees it, and the President of the Republic also spoke about it. The pandemic has really affected us, especially economically, and that requires that every Rwandan realize that they must work extra hard so that we can regain lost ground and continue to help our country develop. I believe he is asking us to work hard and develop because we have security and everything else. We need to make it happen. That way, even people from abroad can come here and see that the country is built upon our own efforts, not those of foreigners. The RPF members also took the time to review the party's 2017-2024 manifesto and how much progress has been made in its implementation, something that political analysts believe is important if the country is to continue making progress. There are certain issues that Rwanda and Africa have continued to face, and considering the reality we find ourselves in, there is a need to work twice as hard as others when you look at how far they have gone compared to us. The truth is, with our history, if we were to work at the pace of others, it would take us very many years to develop. Then there is the issue of Rwanda's relations with her neighbors that the head of state also touched on. We really want that peace so that we can do what we need to do. As for our neighbors, all four of them, things are fine with the exception of one. It used to be that we had issues with two of them. And as for Burundi's case in the south, I can say that we are in the process of finding a common ground of understanding. As for our neighbors to the north, they have a problem with us that even I, a person who lived and worked among them, cannot explain if you were to ask me its exact root cause. However, let me end with this on that matter. I will make sure the roof of my own house is sturdy so that I do not get rained on. I will make sure that I put strong doors on it so that you do not come in and take what is mine. If you do manage to break in, then I will push you out. Let anyone that comes in as an aggressor be swiftly repelled. This was the first Extended National Executive Committee meeting of the RPF Inkotanyi party to take place since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the country back in March last year, and analysts have commended the way the government has been dealing with the effects of the pandemic and its consequences.
Thank you, Serge, for that report. Now, ahead of the World Press Freedom Day celebrated on 3rd May, journalists are being called upon not to violate professional standards using the limited monetary resources in their sector as an excuse. Gloria Motesi has more.
The media industry has over the years developed, including an increase in media houses, as well as public interest, something regular citizens are pleased with. Journalists are interested in the public opinion and do advocacy for the citizens as well, which solves most of the issues in society, which was not the case in the past. However, most dialogues around the World Press Freedom Day are centered on the limited financial capabilities of the media sector, and some people believe it could have an impact on the professionalism of journalists in general. The private media, which I work for, can be a limitation to media freedom and professionalism. For example, if I'm doing an investigative story about someone or something, sometimes people would come and give you a certain amount of money, influencing you to change the angle of the story. There are people that make mistakes and they have money, so they believe they can get away with anything. For instance, someone can pay a journalist off to tarnish another person's reputation, and that person who is a victim does the same thing and pays the journalist to influence the kind of story they write. Most times, this is perhaps brought about by poverty, which distorts the reputation of the journalism profession. The government continues to show support in this sector through capacity building for the journalists. It's also pointing out solutions to further increase their capacity. The advice we can give, especially to the small media houses, is to combine efforts and come together and build capacity to work professionally, because they can't do everything from reporting the story to marketing by themselves. We also need to discuss what capacity is needed for private media to keep growing. Experts believe that media associations are the solutions to the challenges in the media. It is while others believe that instead of violating the professional standards, one would rather leave the profession. I believe they should work together. The journalists, the media managers, and the media associations should work together so no one is left behind. What I would encourage a journalist who realizes that poverty could influence them to sway away from the professional standards is to just leave the profession, because that's not the only thing they can do for a living after all. World Press Freedom Day is celebrated annually on the 3rd of May. In 2018, a Rwanda Media Barometer study conducted by the Rwanda Governance Board showed that the rate of media development in Rwanda was 72.4%. Media freedom declined to 81.3% from 82.1%, while public confidence in the media was at 75.3%. Based on the result of the study, the Rwanda Governance Board called for media support through associations, as well as revisions to media regulations and capacity building for media house managers.
While customers for various financial institutions wish for the amount of money they can transact over the phone to be increased beyond 1.5 million and beyond 5 million using checks per day in order to improve and expedite service delivery. Gloria Mutesi continues.
A cross-section of people are pleased to be able to carry out digital transactions, but ask that the limits to how much one can withdraw per day be removed. They encourage us to embrace the cashless economy and yet still put limits to how much we can transact on a daily basis. So what's the point? I believe these limits should be removed because it becomes a challenge for us when we have different payments to make, because we are always told that we've gone beyond our limits. The National Bank of Rwanda last year released a statement increasing the amount of money one could withdraw via check to 5 million daily. Dr. Karamuka John, the Director of Payment Systems at the National Bank of Rwanda, says everyone has a limit on how much they can withdraw based on their level in regards to promotion of transacting digitally. For the 1.5 million, that's for the common person. For instance, you're sending money to each other. But for institutions that are paying salaries for different people or traders that deal with mobile money, they will exceed that amount. We encourage Rwandans to use these means because it's safer. Dr. Rusibana Claude, a senior researcher and lecturer, says Rwanda is on the same path as Switzerland and South Africa in investing in digital transaction technology because of the benefits. This helps in controlling the way money is spent abroad, as well as steps as efforts in the fight against corruption. Various countries currently have embraced digital transactions in helping businesses and people and traders making payments both in the country and abroad. Over the past 5 years, the National Bank of Rwanda says the percentage of people making digital transactions has gone from 20% to 78% in contribution to the country's gross domestic product. BNR also notes that cash withdrawals have also drastically reduced, now accounting for between just 6 and 8% of those who seek funds from the banks.
Well, residents of Karongi, Gicumbi and Nyamagabe district, where COVID-19 is currently prevalent, are concerned by some of their colleagues who do not comply with the guidelines to prevent the spread of the pandemic, which could result into a lockdown for affected areas.
Figures from the Ministry of Health indicate that COVID-19 has been most prevalent in these 3 districts for the last 5 days. Residents in these districts say they are concerned about people that don't comply with the guidelines, which could prompt the authorities to put them under lockdown. The increase is as a result of people's perception. They don't wash their hands or sanitize or respect any guidelines. We are concerned with the rising numbers of infections and we are worried that we will be put under lockdown. They should also apprehend the people that use dubious means coming from Uganda to enter the country. They should do whatever possible to put them under quarantine and test them. Dr. Edson Ragasori from the Rwanda Biomedical Center says the infections have risen in the last 14 days due to various reasons, including people being complacent. Among the 40,000 tests we have carried out across the country in the past few days, both in Kigali and other provinces, including Karongi, Gicumbi, and Nyamagabe districts, there are some sectors where COVID-19 is prevalent. We found 700 people who were positive, and what cuts across is that people have become complacent. People have opened bars or are convening to pray in crowded places, which is why we're encouraging people to protect themselves and their families. More than 25,000 people have been infected with COVID-19 since the first case was identified in Rwanda last year, and 330 people have lost their lives to the pandemic.
Parents, caregivers, or guardians have been urged to refrain from abusing their children and excessive punishments that may force them into a life on the streets, because such things affect them for the rest of their lives. Rwanda district officials say they are going to address the matter because it hinders the development of the community. Some parents have been found physically harming their children through tough punishments, such as in Rusizi's cell of Nyakiriba sector, where a 7-year-old boy was found tied up at home for stealing potatoes from neighboring farms. People who mistreat their children have been reminded that there are laws in place to hold them accountable, and that a parent or anyone with legal rights over a child who uses, manipulates, or encourages a child to beg on the streets has committed a crime, and if convicted by a court, faces a prison sentence of at least 6 months, and if their abused child has disabilities, the sentence cannot be less than 2 years. Now, moving on in sports news, APR FC has been presented with the 2019-2020 Rwanda Premier League trophy in Huye district after the presentation of the trophy was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. After receiving the trophy, APR FC immediately hosted Gorilla FC in the first game of the season and beat them 2-1. The 2 goals were scored by Kedin Sanzimfura and Shuti Innocent. APR FC's victory puts them in the top spot in their group after the other teams in which The other teams, Bugesera and Muhanga, failed to play in their first match as it was postponed due to the COVID-19 cases in Muhanga team. APR FC will play with Muhanga FC on Wednesday in the second day's matches. Rayon Sport, on the other hand, beat Gasogi UTD 1-0, a goal that was scored during extra time by Sugira Ernest, who had come off the bench. After Rayon Sport's victory, it has now been placed in the first place in the meantime as it faces competition with Rusiro's team, which beat Kiyovu by 2-1 in a match they played in Ruvu district yesterday. Rayon Sport will return to face Kiyovu in the final on Wednesday. The match will take place at the Amahoro National Stadium. The Football League was resumed on Saturday with matches taking place across the country. In Kigali, Police FC beat Etincelles 5-1 in a match that took place at Amahoro Stadium. During this match, Etincelles were the first to score, but Police equalized as the first half of the game came to an end. The entire second half was dominated by Police FC that scored 4 more goals. In other matches held on the first day of the Champions League, Marine from Rubavu district lost at home to Espoir FC of Rusizi district 1-0, and Musanze also lost at home 4-2 to AS Kigali. Kiyovu Sport lost to Rusiro by 2-1 in a match that took place in Rubavu district. Mukura drew 1-1 with Sunrise. 2 matches are scheduled for Monday, with Rayon Sport hosting Gashugi United and APR FC receiving Gorilla. Well, on behalf of the entire news production team, thank you for your company. I'm Jane Motoni. Bye for now.